What is up, Team Angry? My name is Lucas Scheffel, the creator and writer of Angry Fred and the Angry Squad. So recently I was asked the question, how do I write my scripts? How do I come up with my ideas? Is there a special, format for a script that I follow? And I thought I'd just answer that by doing this quick video. First up, to be honest, I don't think I can sort of teach you or show you exactly how I come up with my ideas or, how that happens, how that creative process works. I think that's something that you as an individual will, over time, after writing lots or creating lots, will understand what sort of processes work for you. For me in particular, I get a lot of inspiration from obviously the people around me when I'm writing my stories. And, case in point, Angry Fred is based on my late dad, especially a character that we created in a film called The Counterpart, a zombie action film that had a gangster in it that basically was Angry Fred, dressed the same way as this character, with the sunglasses, smoked the cigar and so forth. And I guess some of the traits and nuances of the Angry Fred character in the comic books obviously is derived from my dad, and also other, male figures that I, had around me growing up, taking little, like I said, nuances from these people's little habits or just little things that they'd say or, things that they would do or how they would act or their demeanor and so forth. And that's, I guess, how I created that character. And also on top of that, there's things like, the characters of Loud Lily and Little Marie and Marcus Knight. Those characters were in that same film that, that the Angry Fred character existed in. And also, like, at the moment, I'm traveling around Australia in a caravan with my family, and we're meeting lots of interesting people along our way. And just talking to different folk, you pick up again on certain demeanors, certain way people say things, or how they carry themselves, or how they act, or how they move their hands, or talk and so forth. And that sort of stuff inspires me as well. I take little grabs of that from different people we meet. Like the other day, we were traveling somewhere and we were in a small town, and they had like a mining museum, and that really sparked some sort of creative thought when going through this museum. They had an old, World War II motorbike, like army motorbike, that was fully restored and was sitting in the museum. And to me, looking at that motorbike, I was thinking up of ideas and, thinking about, a character who could ride this motorbike and what sort of adventures they'd go on. And to me, that was kind of cool to have that. And, I'm seeing that even places I go, I get inspired and so forth. So this whole journey in itself, traveling with my family is kind of beneficial to the creative process. So I don't know, some people, have a knack for, creating stuff just off a whim and out of nowhere, and, stuff comes through them onto the page and they create their stories. As you know, Angry Squad Viva Los Angry is coming out on July 22nd on Kickstarter, and it's a continuation of the Angry Squad story we saw in Code Angry, the very first Angry Squad book. This time the character is a little bit more developed, and then they're more of a team. You can see Gary the Gorilla, obviously. He's teaming up with the guys, and of course Mama Coco's as well is teaming up with the guys. Initially, when I first start writing, I know I have, when it comes to the story, say like Angry Squad, Viva Los Angry, I know that there's an end goal. Like I know what my end scene is going to be. In this case, I'm not going to spoil anything by saying this. I know that there was always going to be a car race, a drag race in the desert with Angry Fred and his ex-army buddy who's come back from the dead. And that whole scenario there was them racing to win a race to save the life of one of their ex-lovers that these guys met. They met this girl in Vietnam when they were in the Vietnam War. And so that there was sort of the premise of that. I knew that was going to be at the end. I knew I wanted to have an Elvis Presley 1960s zany movie vibe in there because I'm a big Elvis fan, and I wanted to inject that into this story. My dear mum, she's an Elvis fan as well, and obviously she's dear to my heart. And in the last book, I paid a lot of homage to my dad, so I wanted to do something for my mum in this one. So that's for my mum. So I wanted to add that into the mix, and I wanted to make this, high color, poppy, zany, sort of action packed sort of comic book. So I had that. I knew what my end goal was in mind, and then from there, I know the front end's basically going to be a bookend of the back end, and then throughout that, I'll just outline. I'll literally just get a Word document and I'll use it as a scratch pad, and I'll just dump ideas down onto it. So many different ideas that I think that wants to happen in this story, and then I'll pick the best ones and cull it down, because obviously you can't have every single idea in there. Obviously it'd just be a mammoth 200-page book, which I'm not going for. I'm going for 60 pages with this book, so there's a limit. And then from there, I'll take that scratch pad of notes and I'll open up a fresh Word document, and then I'll start outlining each scene, how I want it in order, and describing what's going to happen in each scene. No dialogue, just describing what I want to happen in there. And then once I've done all that, I'll go back and then I'll start writing the process in this format, page 1, panel 1, wide panel, blah, 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 dialogue, and so on. So a few people ask me, how do you communicate what you want to have on the comic book page in the panels with your comic book artist? And here's an example of some inks that Martin Puceau has done on Viva Los Angry. You can see here there's 4 panels on the page. There's a lot of special effects writing going on. There's a few dialogue boxes and so forth. And it's like, how do I communicate that to him? How does he take that away? And how much of it is him? And like, does he add a little bit more, or and so forth? And well, for me, I just get up a Word document. In this instance, it's a Pages document on my Mac, and I basically start out by just showing, the page number, how many panels are going to be in the page. Now, in this one, I've put 5, and yes, it is 5. Sorry, before I said it was 4. It's actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and this little traffic light here is number 5. Okay, correction on my part. Straight up, the artists know there's going to be 5 panels on the page, and here underlined is panel 1, and I'm basically saying straight out, formatting wise, is a wide panel. So straight off the bat, he knows at the very top there's going to be a wide panel. Now for him, when he's looking at the page, he knows there's 5 panels on the page. He knows there's panel 1, it's a wide panel. Panel 2 is a mid-sized panel. Panel 3 is mid-sized. Panel 4 is small, the inset one with a close-up on the stoplights, and panel 5 is a wide panel. So in his mind, he'd probably take that away before even, figuring out what the action is. And he sketches out this. He'll probably briefly read through and know that, okay, we need X amount of panels on the page. How are we going to fit them in? How wide is this panel going to be? How small is this one going to be? And so forth. When it comes to describing what's in these panels, I pretty much write it down. So as you can see, this first wide panel, it's nighttime. We see 2 cars waiting at a set of stoplights on a quiet city street. The cars are front on. It's an industrial area outside the city. The car on the left is a Toyota Supra. It's going to be bright orange in color. It's got LED lights illuminating from its underbody. The car has some fancy graphics on the side. It's got a body kit with an oversized spoiler hanging from the back of the car. Now, the car on the right is a 1950 Mercury, and it's low to the ground, white wall tires. It has low roof, but it's a rust bucket with mismatched panels. Some rusted areas are half painted, and it looks like it's going to fall apart. And you'll notice here, this is where my dialogue or special effects comes in. I make it bold. I put 1. This is the order that it appears on the screen, or on the panel, sorry. 1 text box, and so the first battle begins. And then that would appear up in here. And, all these little special effects, like, things, obviously, the cars revving, going broom, broom, that's added in there, obviously, as well, later on down the track. That was something, I would have discussed with Martin as we were going along. But as you can see from there, I'm painting a picture of what is in this panel, where we are, what the mood's like, what the characters' cars are like, and so forth. And so as we move down the page, again, it's like I'm writing panel 2, mid-sized panel, which is this one here, and we introduce this young Asian kid who's, thinks he's, the shit. He's, slick back hair, wears a baggy t-shirt and a fancy watch. And, in this instance here, I did say, slick back hair, baggy t-shirt, and wears a fancy watch. Well, if you look at the panel here closely, Martin's decided to go with a hat. cap backwards. You know, that makes the kid look a bit more cooler and a little more arrogant, you know, in the sense because his hat's backwards, you know, he's going against the norm, that sort of thing. So these are little things that, you know, he'll take what I've written and he'll just add something else to it. And it's definite in this next panel, like in panel 3. You know, I've written here, it's a mid-sized panel. We're going to see Angry Fred behind the wheel, and he's big and bold in frame. You know, he's got his hand up in the steering wheel. And the way that Martin showed Angry Fred being big and bold behind the frame with his smoking his cigar and looking cool was we're in a low angle. You know, his fist is up front holding that wheel, and he's looking pretty big and bold, you know. And, you know, he's staring straight forward, but, you know, he's got some dialogue here. He's talking about how cheeky the kid is, and he's just, you know, doing his own thing. Now, it's interesting in this description here, in this panel, I didn't make any note of this Hawaiian bubble girl on the dashboard or this, you know, air freshener, you know, forest green mint air freshener hanging from the rear vision mirror. That's something that Martin put in. And that's, you know, to me, that's the collaborative process of creating you know, anything in life, I guess. You know, you give them something and they'll add a little bit extra. You know, that's just, you know, Martin's a really good artist. He knows, he's done it enough now that he knows that, you know, back in the day, he probably was only given like a couple of lines, you know, of description, and then he just instinctively add this sort of stuff in. And, you know, this is what I like about it. We're building a world for him to follow. And from that, he's just adding in, you know, layer and layer, and, you know, taking his own creative expression here and adding these little elements in. That's pretty much in a nutshell how I go about writing, you know, my scripts and so forth. Now, you will hear some instances, Stan Lee, for instance, with Marvel. They did the Marvel style when he was, you know, editor-in-chief of Marvel back in the day. And he created all those great comics that, you know, a lot of us follow, and characters and so forth. Back then, you know, he obviously started very similar, I guess, to this sort of style of writing scripts. But he found that, you know, to be efficient and have enough speed and to have enough time on his hands, he had to figure out a better way and a better workflow to get his artists the scripts and to keep creating characters at a fast pace and pumping out enough comic books. And the style that he created, the Marvel style that we know today, is something that has a little bit of controversy connected to it, I guess, if you read into it and you look at interviews and so forth, you can talk to people in the comic book space. That, you know, it's, in some ways the artists didn't get enough recognition for the stuff they created, because what Stan did was he communicated to his artists in a way where he just write plot points down on maybe one page or a synopsis of what was actually going to happen in the whole entire comic book. As you can imagine what would happen then if an artist has just got one page synopsis of this will happen at this point, blah, 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 and it's got a specific plot point. They have to take it away and they have to create the panels themselves to figure out how many panels are going to be on the page, you know, the placements of the characters, sometimes how the character looks and feels. And then, so you get these instances where, you know, the likes of Jack Kirby, the famous Marvel artist, you know, comic book artist, and Steve Ditko, who's, you know, could very well be said the guy who pretty much created Spider-Man, were the ones that were creating all these, you know, crazy worlds and, you know, crazy looking characters and stuff. Obviously with the guidance of Stan Lee, and I don't know how much they communicated over the phone and if there was notes passed over and stuff like that during the process. You just don't know, I guess. But there's a lot of, you know, back and forth and like who's the rightful, you know, creator here. Is it co-created, or is it, you know, Stan the one who's created, or you know, Jack Kirby or Steve Ditko are the ones, you know. And I think there's a lot of monetary stuff going on there as well, where, you know, maybe they weren't paid or recognized enough for, you know, their efforts. So there is that style of writing as well. I've heard there's a lot of guys that still, you know, do that as well. They'll give plot points. You know, a creator will give plot points to their writer, and then the writer will go out and write it, and then the artist will come in. It's interesting with Stan Lee's approach to writing scripts. When he did the plot points, he sent it to the artist. The artist did all panel work. The artist didn't do anything about the dialogue and so forth. They obviously maybe had a feel for how, you know, sequences would flow and so forth, but it was that they took that, no dialogue, they took the completed artwork and gave it back over to Stan Lee, and then Stan Lee would add in the dialogue after the fact, which is really interesting. The workflow, it speeds it up, and it's like, you know, it's an interesting business model to follow. But that's just a little, I guess, a little tidbit there, a side note on that. For me, how did I figure out how to write in this format of comic book writing? Like I said, I'm no writer. My background is in filmmaking. So, for instance, you know, when you write a script, let's show you something here. When you write a script in a film, normally you have, you know, if you taking it professionally and seriously enough, you've got programs called Final Draft and so forth. And normally when you write a script, it's like scene 1, exterior, bank, and then you'd be like daytime. And then you'd write, your description underneath that of what's happening in the scene or what it's leading into. And then under that, you'd write the character's name, and then they will be, spitting out that dialogue, and that will go down the page, obviously, and that'll be all centered and stuff like that. I've worked, I've written short film scripts and feature film scripts and worked on, commercials and so forth and stuff like that, where, you're working on one side of the page is video and the other side is audio, and, you got script and you're writing out your visuals and stuff. So I guess to me that was sort of very similar to this process. But how did I figure out this process? That was enough for me to help communicate that to my artist. Well, I looked to none other than The Walking Dead, the Walking Dead comic book. I hunted around the internet and looked for example scripts of how, writers wrote their comic books or graphic novels and how they communicated that to their artists. And I came across The Walking Dead issue 1 script. And so I decided to sit down and read that issue 1 comic book first, and then analyze how Robert Kirkman wrote his script and how Tony Moore interpreted that, drew that on the page. And it was really, really interesting to see. And this is the sort of the pattern that I follow. He writes page 1, he knows how many panels are going to be on the page, so he gives a true indication of, so the artist knows what he's in for. And then there's panel 1, it's going to be a wide panel, and he does a description of what happens. He sees Rick Grimes and his partner ducking out of the police car, which is, portrayed here. Shane, and he describes how big, each character is, and they're fighting off a hillbilly who's crazy with guns and so forth. And then as you come down here, there's things like this, the special effects, like there's a boom, which we see up here. It's interesting to note in this panel, there's no dialogue here at all, but maybe after the fact, Shane's put in this line, they've put in a line for Shane, this is not good. And, they've added a little bit more, special effects text in here as well, like a bit of a spack, like the ricocheting off of the bullet. So I guess that's a natural progression of what, how it flows and so forth. So yeah, I pretty much analyzed the Walking Dead issue 1 script with the comic book itself, and just went back and forth and analyzed each panel and saw what was described and how it was portrayed, in the artist putting it on the page. Another thing I like to do before I send it off to the artist, and I don't even share this with the artist, I just do it for my own sake, is if I know that a page is going to have 6 panels on it, and they're going to be all different sizes, I'll just, when I'm writing, if I'm feeling like it's not flowing or I'm getting too much dialogue in, or I've got too many panels on the page, I'll actually draw each panel just on a piece of paper and flesh it out and just quickly sketch what I think is going to be in there, and then see if that flows in my mind and think, okay, that should be easy enough to communicate over to the artist. And that's how I'm writing Angry Squad Viva Los Angry, taking that approach of just, writing panel by panel, how many panels on a page, and then communicating that over to my artist, Martin, who's doing a fantastic job of bringing this vision to life. It's pretty amazing to see, because it's all just words and so forth, And, even along the process, I'll look at other comic books, or I'll just look up random photos on, Google Images, just to spark some sort of, idea if I want to figure out a pose, what sort of pose I want to describe the characters to be in. I have a bit of a problem when it comes to writing descriptions, as I'm putting too much descriptive notes in my writing, to the point where I don't need to worry. It might be a cafe scene, and up front we've got Angry Fred and Marcus Knight talking, and really the action at the front is them two talking, and it's not who's in the background. And I might get too detailed and say, oh, there's a guy in the background in a green shirt eating a pizza, and there's another guy drinking a chocolate milkshake, and it's like, that has nothing to do with the story. So, they're little things that Martin will obviously add in, because he knows there's a cafe, for instance. There's going to be just having a line, there's people in the cafe, it's busy, there's lots of patrons in there. He'll add in whatever he needs to add in, obviously, but it'll be separate from that and won't detract from what's happening up front. So guys, there you have it. I hope that sort of answers any questions that any of you have had in regards to how I write my scripts. As I said, Angry Squad Viva Los Angry is coming out on the 22nd of July. I'm going to kickstart it. There's going to be some very cool reward tiers that are going to be available for this Kickstarter in particular. I will let you know that there will be a tier where people can actually pledge to get their likeness drawn into the comic book. So guys, I hope that has helped you understand how I am approaching writing Angry Squad Viva Los Angry and how to approach, all the comics I write. I'm pretty hands-on when it comes to the writing process and the creative process. I like that. I like being creative. It's a lot of fun, and it's a good outlet for me, and it gets a lot of the stuff it's in my head, out there into the open, and to share it with you guys. And I hope it really helps you guys escape and get entertained, because I like creating these characters and it's fun. Like who wouldn't like a big gorilla with headphones and a Walkman and sneakers on who eats pizza? Oh, that's kind of cool. Hey, we can create these things, in this comic book world. It's fun and it's exciting. Anyway, guys, thanks for listening to me waffle on. I really hope you've enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next video. And thank you for signing up to my email list. Bye.